Hello and welcome to A Day with the Cart Driver. We are up to the Spring 2015 season. I'm Scamp.
I'm Day.
And Spring 2015 is a very big season, so that's why we're just going to kick things straight off. Oh, I see you found my dumbbells.
I see someone has been watching how much can you lift this.
Yes, and doing all the workouts, but that is for another season. We're here to talk about the Spring 2015 season, therefore we're going to kick off with the most important thing, which is Triage X Evangelion.
I feel like that... Do you not remember internet slang?
Is chic like fat but for ladies?
Yes, although it's usually more commonly schlick.
Schlick, okay.
Anyway.
That was the ad for razors, which included Gendo Ikari shaving off his beard and going, "This is the most amazing thing ever," which was officially endorsed.
Oh.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yes, they're razors too, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't think... I'm not sure that anyone uses that slang anymore, though.
Chic, no.
I might be, going way back.
Way back. And the other, of course, so obviously that was a joke.
Actually, it's funny, I was looking over the list. I assumed that this is somehow to do with Shinkalion.
No.
But it's too early, I think, for that. Well, maybe.
We're going to talk about the actual biggest show this season was, of course, Vampire Homes.
Vampire Homes is, quite frankly, probably... I've seen shows that were worse, but this was definitely the show that was... This is a terrible show.
Possibly the worst of the decade?
Yeah, although... So this was a series of... It was a short. The episodes were like 4 minutes long.
It was used to sell a phone game.
Yes, although I am not convinced the phone game was any good either, based on how...
Or even came out.
Yeah, I don't know. So I will say this about Vampire Homes, though. If I recall correctly, I think it was primarily made by a single person.
Okay.
So I suppose you could give some wiggle room there. But then again, you turn around and you look at someone like Sobi Yamamoto, who also made things solely by herself, or perhaps the more famous example
Shinkai.
of Makoto Shinkai, and you then look at Vampire Homes, it's like, I'm not sure this is an excuse.
Also, people make stuff. One, this was an ad, and two, this was officially licensed and subtitled professionally by Crunchyroll.
No, it wasn't.
It was
ran on Viewster. It was not Crunchyroll.
I swear it was Crunchyroll.
It was not.
Okay.
Because I know, so at one point, Viewster is a streaming platform that I actually just read about today. Apparently, if you try to go to their website, it redirects to a different streaming platform now. Okay. But this was a very small streaming platform that streamed anime. Not much that was new, but one of the shows they were streaming that was new was Vampire Homes. That's right. And I know it was Vampire Homes, too, because I was trying to watch it, and for some reason it kept auto-defaulting to Italian subs. Here's the thing, too. They subbed it into multiple languages. Yep. And I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I said something on Twitter about it, and the companies... I didn't even tweet at the company, but their... social media person tweeted at me and was like, "Hey, you're having trouble with this. Try cleaning your cache, blah, blah, blah." Anyway, I was a little bit impressed with how quickly they, anyway.
For this classic show. But that's the thing, it's like, students make anime. We've seen Shirobako. There's a student like anime. That's a thing. But they're not always, you don't...
And you're right, this was also an advertisement.
Yeah. So...
I'm a little less inclined to be.
And 12 episodes, this is...
It was remarkably terrible. Visually, it's like they had no concept whatsoever of plotting something. Things just happened randomly, even though theoretically there was some kind of story supposedly tying this all together. There were points at which the backgrounds were reduced to... they look like they'd been made in Microsoft Paint. That's not an exaggeration. No sense of just the visual composition. It's slapping it's just everything was wrong. I am hard-pressed to think of an anime that is similarly a failure on so many different levels.
There was the shard is maybe correct way to describe it. There's the one called Fart.
Nothing short of calling in.
Yes, dear. Is the was the one about the sentient fart, but I think I only saw like one episode of this, where I was like, for some reason I saw multiple episodes of Vampire Home, so you just
we watched every week.
You watched more than me. I saw like 4 or 5.
I think you watched the whole thing with me.
I
think you're just pretending. Oh, and this, by the way, was also the last time that the woman who sang the OP, she sang the ending for Archivolin. She had previously done work on either Gundam 00 or Gundam Seed, I forget which. This is the last thing she did in anime.
Yep.
So I think her career petered out a little bit.
Oh well.
Oh god, it's astonishingly terrible. Mm-hmm. You should check it out.
But yeah, so jumping from the worst thing this season to the best thing this season. I'm going to call it the best thing because...
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin. So if you've been listening to this podcast, you'll know that I in particular have been belly aching about just the really poor quality of mecha anime this decade. And I don't think there's anything this decade that was a mecha anime that was that was a brand new series, so not connected to Gundam or the other case like Aquarian. I don't have any original new mecha anime that I really like. Maybe Breakblade at like 2010. But I think in terms of singular mecha anime, Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin might be my favourite. It is
even above Thunderbolt, because I know you quite liked Thunderbolt.
I like Thunderbolt a lot. We'll get to talk about Thunderbolt soon. Thunderbolt is kind of miserable. It's a real success of what it aims to do, but it's also just miserable to watch. Whereas Mobile Suit Gundam,
you know what?
The Origin is If
you think about it, maybe Gundam Thunderbolt is the successful version of Victory Gundam,
perhaps, or even Zeta Gundam. But
now there's a controversial statement. Anyway,
Gundam The Origin is the origin story of Char, aka Casval. I can't remember his name because I always call him Casval.
We're back to Char. Sorry.
Are you about to make a very stupid joke?
I said we're back to Shard.
Shard, thanks, dear. Casval. I can't remember his full name, so I always call him Casval Onisan because that's what his sister calls, who's kind of the main character in the show, certainly for the first half. Sayla.
At that point, she's still known as Artesia.
Artesia, yes. It covers the story of Char, the Red Common, like him as a kid, how he became... And one thing it doesn't back down on is that Char is a bad person. Like a really, really bad person.
Yeah, it's definitely, to me, now, I have not finished it, and maybe I'll get back to it at some point.
At the very least.
There's stuff about it that I like, but there's also stuff that I look at, and I'm like, the fact that in the 80s, this series had a fairly archaic vision of women in society is, perhaps somewhat understandable. The fact that it still has a fairly that they're replicating that fairly archaic approach to women in society is like, folks, really? Like,
you looked
outside?
You watched the first 2 episodes. I would say episode...
I watched episode 3 also.
Oh, you did watch the one with where Char finally meets up with blame this on mistakes of your birth. Blame this on the
I think I watched episode 3.
With because that was my favorite.
You know what else? Gundam The Origin was one of the things that you actually could buy on Daisuke.
Yes, they actually.
Because that's what we did.
They're now streaming it as a TV show on Crunchyroll.
Yes, I know.
So you did actually see the one where it's Char meets up with what's his name, little whingy kid.
Oh, the purple-haired guy.
Who they totally ship. Come on. But yeah, he's because that episode was great because he just kept goading him into, do you know what would be good? If you started a coup, that would be really great, wouldn't it? It's also where you see, Char, it's kind of been clear in early episodes, Char is bad, but there was also the bit where one guy figures out who he is and he just blows him up in a tank.
Well, yeah. I feel like you really noticed it in episode 2. It's like, wait. Because in episode 1, he's a kid.
Yes.
So there's some of the stuff it's like, well, he's 12.
Yeah.
But then in episode 2, it's like, oh, you can kind of see that he's planning to do something terrible and take on someone else's identity type stuff.
Because he's not Char. We meet Char. So was it the start of episode 3 or was it episode 2, at the end of episode 2, where he enacts his plan to become Char? No, it must be at the start of episode 3 because the end of episode 2... Yeah, I don't think it happens end of episode 2 is him saying bye to Artesia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her being like, why, Oni-san?
Oh, Casvel, Oni-san. His hair blows off. One thing to say, this thing is beautifully animated. It's very kind of like expressive and cartoony and colourful, but it's really, really well animated. It's like most kind of Gundam stuff this decade, actually. A lot of production value put into this.
Well, also it's an OVA.
OVA, yes.
So it's kind of a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, I think, I will say actually, the first half is better than the second half. The second half gets a bit...
Actually, it's interesting if you think about it. You were saying the thing about, no original mech series. I'm trying to think of how to put it. Well, the OVA at this point is largely the province of, like, a special for a show that already exists.
Yes.
Whereas the only things that really are getting OVAs that aren't solely about, this is a side story or something like that, it's Sunrise. It's making primo crap for pre-existent franchises.
Yeah, so that's why you get things like...
But, not the side story type things, but actually like, hey, this takes place within the same franchise, but we're following a different story over here.
Yeah. I think we meet Ramba Ral in the early episodes, who is one of the best characters in the whole Gundam franchise, I would argue.
I don't think too many folks would argue against that.
It's really... I think the second half is a bit weaker because it kind of gets more into like connecting the two, and we get a bit more of the main character, Amuro. I think it ends quite strongly though. You get more to Amuro and he's less interesting because he's a kid, whereas Char is a more interesting person.
I do remember there's the one scene in either the first or second episode where you get a very brief shot of very small child Amuro.
Yes.
Getting a harrow as a gift.
Yes, you do get to meet, you do get a little bit more of Amuro in kind of the later episodes.
You also get your first look at Mirai.
And Mirai, yes, she comes up as well. She's driving the... Because she's like a civilian pilot at that time, isn't she?
Well, I know she's introduced in the second episode because her father is friends with the family that ends up taking in Casval and Artesia.
Yes.
Who he then thanks for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we get to see Artesia. There's like a big riot breaks out in that town, and then Artesia takes up like an old... Because they're like... It's based off like weird Texas... like ranch they've got, and she takes out an old-fashioned like handgun, not handgun, but like old-fashioned like musket, and brains fools with it. It's pretty great.
But anyway,
I would recommend this if you have ever been interested in the Gundam series before, but were afraid of old school animation. If you are totally okay with those...
Of course, I think you're a coward if you're like that, but that's just me.
But if you're like, I don't know about this like, if you want to watch any Gundam, but you're okay with like older animation, go watch the Mobile Suit Gundam 0079, which is the original movie trilogy, which just covers the TV series, but cuts out a lot of the like episodes where the white base goes to get salt and kind of things like that. But if you're like, I'm unsure about kind of old school animation, go watch Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin. It is fantastic. Really, really one of my favourite things this decade. It may, though, not necessarily have the best treatment of women.
My biggest... I feel like in the first episode, the fact that Cassilia is doing her negotiation with Char, who's 12 years old, and not with his mother, I think speaks volumes about what it thinks about women.
Okay.
I also think the fact that they butched up her design and also depict her as being sexually, there's that scene where she jumps out of bed and there's a guy in the bed and she's completely naked. Her design versus her design in the original trilogy, they're making it very clear that, setting her up in opposition to the mother. Here's this woman, she's butch, she's seemingly sexually free with herself, she doesn't have children, she's not tied down to a man, she's not very quietly going in like, oh yes, and being soft and quiet and ceding her public self to a man as she should be, I think is very clear. There's that scene in the first episode where she is on the horse and she rides up to the car that I can't even think of the mother's name is sitting in. And that in particular, I think it's like, oh, we're getting the two visions here and it's pretty clear which side the show wants us to be on. Also, too, I'm sorry, but it's the plot demands it, but the fact that the mother ends up not going with them is silly as hell. There is genuinely, they do not portray it convincingly that she couldn't have gone with them. That portion comes across as, well, we're doing this because it would be sad. Okay. Not because it makes sense within this chain of events that we've carried out. Like, come on, they could have shoved her in the mech too. There was plenty of room. Anyway, but that's my feelings about it. So, I wouldn't. Now you have the negative side of it.
I wouldn't defend any, because like even later episodes have some things where you're like, oh, come on.
And again, it's not as if it was totally excusable in the 80s, but it's really not in 2015.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, folks. Especially when you consider, I mean, Tomino himself, and I know he didn't work on this, has been quite open about the fact that, well, of course we had tons of girls as fans. Well, that's the only reason it still exists, because we had them early on.
Yeah.
Not to say his record's necessarily pissa, but...
I was just thinking some of the other Gundam stuff that came out this decade included Iron-Blooded Orphans, which was...
Yeah, it's not been a great decade for women in Gundam, for the most part. But I think that's enough about Gundam.
Yeah, so let's...
There's a lot of other shows we have to discuss,
We're probably going to blitz through a lot of these, because a lot of these, for one, I don't think either of us have watched that much of, but yeah, so anyway, all joking aside, so there was a ton of anime this season, and a lot of anime that actually left quite a bit of impact on anime fandom, but there's no one that's huge. This one is probably the biggest, though, which is Food Wars.
Yeah.
It's felt like one of the big hit shonen properties this decade.
Although not... But the sort of unifying the one show to rule them all is less of a thing.
Yes.
In shonen properties. And I mean... like the straight-up shonen properties, not stuff that's a little harder edged.
I think the closest that we got to that would have been, in terms of straight shonen properties, would be My Hero Academia.
Yeah.
And even that it doesn't run fully in the same way that Food Wars has. Oh, well, even though Food Wars has had 6 seasons worth or something.
4? Isn't it getting another season in the fall?
It's ending now. I actually found this up while looking this up. It is ending. It may even be, this story was in June or something. That it's ending now. So they got one last season, I think. Apparently, people seem quite unhappy with how the last few chapters have gone, so maybe it just...
that just means it stopped being as pervy, I'm sure. I'm not a fan.
So Food Wars...
I don't like it at all, in fact.
I saw 3 episodes, I don't know, I thought it was fine. It was ex-hentai artist decided to instead make a shonen property and then to use all his ahegao faces for ladies eating food and then finding them absolutely incredible is the basic. So much so that they would pull oh my god, I pull the same face when I eat this beef jerky as I would when I get a dick up my butt, basically.
That was a rather vivid example.
Look, there's no point beating around the bush when you're a hentai artist. Yes, which is it's kind of now the definitive example. There's plenty of artists over time that have gone from drawing, porn, Clamp being a pretty famous example.
I mean, to be honest, I think it's a fairly significant portion of the industry.
Yeah. Clamp is a famous example because they did JoJo stuff, I think.
I always like the example of, I can't think of her name, but the author of, there was a manga, Tactics, that got an adaptation in 2003. What I find amusing there is that she was drawing dirty doujins of her own characters. Because she couldn't include the content in the official releases. But so she'd go to Comic-Con and be selling trashy doujins, having all her characters fucking.
Yeah, but Food Wars is the most pertinent example because as soon as someone says it to you, you're like, oh, of course. Oh yeah, it was huge. It was just, it's a cooking shonen, and there was clearly space for this.
It's no fucking Yakitate Japan. That's all I'm saying.
Better animation though, Yakitate.
Well, yes. Yakitate Japan is also like at least 10 years older.
True. So there was that. If we're speaking more, so that wasn't while Food Wars was big, it felt like it was more big within kind of like the more casual anime fan base, people who like watch a couple of shonens. People who watch a couple of shonens, and that's kind of it. Whereas the big thing amongst the like total loser weebs, and it kind of was, it felt like there was like maybe 6 months where this was the only character you saw on like everyone's profile, which was Hestia, aka Boob Ribbon.
Boob Ribbon.
Boob Ribbon girl. I don't know anything else about Dungeon Pickup. What's it called?
We watched the first. Is it okay?
Is it wrong to pick up
girls in a dungeon? Yeah. To which I would say, if you have to ask.
There's a sequel airing this season, and so more people have watched it than I thought were.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not what it was.
They waited a while to have a sequel. I mean, I know they had the side story one aired a few seasons back, but it's just, it's an isekai that's also not an isekai.
It's not an isekai because
he didn't transfer into another world, but it still has the exactly same, like, structural things as an isekai, which is to say, it's like, oh, I'm going to level up.
It's set in what is basically an MMORPG, except the character is just a character in an MMORPG.
Yeah.
Rather than it being, and also he's got a bunch of ladies who inexplicably want him. It's light novel.
Well, I mean, he's fine. He's certainly not the worst of
No, he's a bit milquetoasty, but
he's a decent human being, which definitely gives him an edge over a lot of the protagonists in these sorts of shows in recent years.
The show did give us that one gif of them brushing their teeth.
I think that's from the OP.
Yeah, it's a pretty good gif.
But yeah, there's that.
More shonen properties now. We had Seraph of the End, which was, I think, the first anime Wit Studio made after Attack on Titan.
There's some... I did not end up watching much of it because I had read part of the manga. It got really boring when they transitioned to being in schools. So this takes place in a world where the vampires have taken over. And its first volume is pretty grim.
It's a lot.
This is the sort of thing that they start off by killing an incredible amount of very small children.
Yeah.
And after they've struggled very mightily.
Yes. It's actually a lot like Promised Neverland.
Yes, but then unfortunately it got shunted into magic school.
It goes from like being like not original, but like it would stands out. Actually, really good at visuals.
Oh god, that's what I was going to talk about. The visuals were fantastic. The backgrounds, in particular.
Yeah.
But
has a neat OP
because
as well.
I had read part of the manga, I knew it was going to transition to boring magic school antics, so I didn't watch past the first episode.
And like in my head, it's like, did an editor put pressure on them to make it more generic?
I can only assume. Because otherwise it doesn't make much sense.
Yeah. And I feel like, because Promised Neverland is a Jump property.
Yes.
And I wonder, because Promised Neverland, I mean, I haven't read, I've only seen the first season, so I don't quite know what it turns into. If they go to bloody Magic High School and Promised Neverland.
I can't see them doing it.
But it's almost like they learned from Seraph kind of disappearing after the first volume. It's like,
yes, because
let's let them tell
the tonal
shift, yes.
It's immense. Because that first volume, it is... So these kids, and they're being used as... I mean, I'm not spoiling anything because you find out in the first few pages that the vampires have taken over the world, and these kids are used as livestock.
Yep.
They're just there because, the vampires need to eat.
Yep.
And they're kept, and, they're fed, and they're not kept in great circumstances, but it's like, oh, well, some of the kids are like, well, at least I have a warm bed. Mm-hmm. Could be worse. And then, it just, the tonal shift is immense. So, anyway. Good backgrounds. What do we have left of the shonen, actually?
Is there anything else that's shonen-y?
Okay. Kyokai no Rene is definitely shonen.
Yeah, because
So this is one of... Kyokai no Rene is... it is... Rumiko Takahashi decides to do a spirit-busting manga.
Bleach, basically.
Well, Bleach, or Noragami, or Yu Yu Hakusho, or...
Yeah. It's
basically... Although, I think it might slightly predate Noragami, the manga at least.
Oh, it might do, yeah.
Very slightly, but it might. And this is one of those ones that no one really watched in the West. It got 3 seasons, though, so it did decently in Japan. I watched a little bit. It's kind of a bland adaptation. I've always preferred... I don't think I've seen a show yet where I really was pleased with how they adapted Takahashi's character designs, but I really like her art. And I don't think it's a little hard to render that in motion.
I
think her character designs tend to get simplified in ways that I don't really dig.
What I just find surprising about this is there is an argument that Rumiko Takahashi dominated anime fandom from 1980 through to 2004, let's say, whenever Inuyasha was still big.
Yeah.
Because that goes from Urusei Yatsura, Mai Nikoku, which wasn't as big, but, still a lot of people watched it.
Ranma Half.
Ranma Half.
Immense.
Ranma Half's probably the biggest of them all. And the fact that a new Rumiko...
it's hard to say, because Ranma Half was huge with fans who are a little bit older than me.
Yeah.
Inuyasha was, like, a juggernaut in my generation.
I feel Ranma was the show, which I don't think Inuyasha necessarily was.
Well,
I think when it was... This is all before my time is the thing that's making
so how can you say that?
I'm saying that by people of a certain age, when they talk about anime, they talk about Ranma. Whereas people of a certain age, Inuyasha is is behind Naruto.
But I would argue that part of it is a lot of Inuyasha fans just dropped out of fandom.
True.
Granted, also, a lot of Naruto fans also dropped out of fandom.
Yeah.
But I would also point out, Inuyasha was gigantic with girls, and it wasn't as much with boys.
That is true. Whereas I felt like Ranma split the difference.
Yeah.
Whereas in Japan, Urusei Yatsura defines a generation of anime fans. But the fact that a new Takahashi manga gets adapted and makes no waves. Like, I know it got multiple seasons, but I felt like even in Japan I saw no...
Yeah, but 3 seasons.
Yeah.
Though.
I must have just done well on TV, I guess.
Yeah.
Or it was helping sell the manga, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the manga sells respectably. Maybe not outrageously, but...
I was just talking...
It was as I recall, it was a very lifeless adaptation.
Yeah. But I was thinking, because I've actually already written the post for this season, and something that I ended up tying with this was like how things that used to be huge are no longer huge. And something that came out this season was Yuki Nagato, Disappearance of Yuki Nagato.
The TV series.
The TV series, which is, it's basically my Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, but it follows a very generic slice of life story involving Yuki Nagato in that.
And this was, I think, made by A1.
I think it was actually Satellite, but yeah, it wasn't KyoAni.
It wasn't KyoAni.
And I feel like the level to which Haruhi Suzumiya... Because it's not like people have forgotten what Haruhi Suzumiya is. It's still most anime fans will know what Haruhi Suzumiya is.
I'm not sure about that, because I remember a couple of years ago, Crunchyroll posted a clip from the Hari Hari Yukai, and the replies were full of like, what is this? What are you posting? No one knows what this is.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a lot of people are saying that. And I know this too, because then you had older fans like, oh my god, they don't even know what this is. And my reaction, of course, is, well, why would they?
But it's just really striking how, because people at the time called Haruhi the Evangelion of the 2000s. They really, it was the single most defining show within anime fandom, and it felt like it would be a generation definer. And it disappeared.
But also not that many people watched this.
No, that's my point. People didn't watch this, but Haruhi at the time felt eternal. And it has not been like that at all.
As someone who didn't like it that much the first time round, it really doesn't surprise me that it hasn't necessarily aged well.
No, shows I don't like, people continue to bloody talk about.
Yes, but I'm not talking about those shows. I'm talking about a particular example.
Yeah.
And because some of the jokes it makes, the stuff that it is going off of isn't stuff you see that much in anime anymore.
Yeah.
You know, to a current eye, I don't think it looks as groundbreaking as it was taken at the time.
Yeah, I guess.
And now, granted, I hated the show.
Yeah.
Because, quite frankly, I don't find molestation as a joke funny at all. Nor do I find it amusing to watch characters repeatedly torment other characters. I just don't find that at all amusing. It doesn't surprise me at this point. You know, there are other shows that I didn't like, but I don't look at it and go, well, I don't understand why this is still a big deal, because I can see why it's still a big deal.
It's just really interesting how KyoAni just... So it's fairly clear KyoAni made a switch to wanting to control...
In-house content.
In-house content. So this season they had South Euphonium, which is a favourite of yours, I think. Isn't
I wouldn't say it's a favourite. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah.
But I'll also point out, I dropped it originally.
Oh, really?
So Sound Euphonium concerns, it is a high school band club, really. And this girl, she's starting high school, and she's like, okay, I'm going to do band. And she goes to the club, and she's like, wow, they suck. They're not even trying. Oh, she sees them perform. And then they end up getting a new band director who's like, well, okay, what do you want to do? Do we want to aim for the stars? Or do we just, want to have a good time type thing? And people decide, oh, actually they'd like to aim for the stars. And this girl has just come off of middle school when her band... They, flubbed it in the final frame, and they ended up not progressing to nationals type deal.
Yeah.
And there was one girl...
Sports anime.
And there was one girl in particular who was like, we shouldn't be happy with this. Why are people happy about this? This is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so it's about a high school band. And it works... It's not a complex show. It's a very well-made show, and it also... It's a well-executed show is how I would put it. Yeah. It's also one of those shows, though, that I look at, I'm like, The Monkey's Paw, because it got a second season that I think was just a complete waste of time.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so it's a pretty decent show, but I dropped it, and then I ended up skipping a couple episodes when I picked it up again.
Is that your favorite show this season? I don't know how much...
It must be?
Because did you watch much
Okay.
What?
Triage X.
How?
Hey, folks. Do you remember High School of the Dead? Well, guess what? The guy who made that made another series called Triage X.
Did you think the boobs in High School of the Dead were not ridiculous enough?
Well, Triage X is here for you. It's not really fair to compare these. I enjoyed both of them, but for wildly different reasons. Triage X was my kind of garbage show.
I still don't. I don't.
Triage X is terrible. It's about this, it's a group of, medical workers who are also assassins, and they're called Black Label. It's a terrible show. And yes, but I'll point this out. Leave it up to your porny-ass shit to actually acknowledge that there are women who are doctors in Japan. Because one of the characters, she's a doctor. The female characters are not all nurses. This never gets acknowledged.
Anyway.
It's terrible. I can't recommend it, but I did enjoy it immensely.
Anyway. You got to talk about your favourite show this season. So I got to my actual favourite TV show, because, I guess... Gundam the Origin actually got a TV show in the end, but my favourite TV show this season...
is Edotama.
No, it's not Edotama.
It's Gunslinger Stratos.
Gunslinger Stratos, aka the show that Genro Bucci was involved in the sense that
he crapped in the toilet of the production studio one day because he had diarrhea after lunch.
He walked into the recording booth and said, "Hi everyone." Okay, bye. And then it was like, yes, Gunslinger Stratos. Anyway,
I don't even remember what it was about.
Neither do I. It was a game once, I know that.
Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
My favourite show this season, albeit with huge caveats, was Blood Blockade Battlefront.
It was pretty good.
A.k.a. Kekai Sensen. You saw season 1 of this?
Yes.
I forgot about
we
that.
watched it together.
Yes, because you didn't watch season 2.
No.
Even though it's better.
That's okay.
Sometimes
you have to make choices in your life.
It was the author of Trigun, did a manga, and it was adapted by, what's her name?
Rie
Matsumoto. The one who did Heart Catch and Kyosugiga. And it is a wild, colourful, crazy, sort of like New York. Imagine Men in Black, except they just stopped giving a shit and say, yeah, there's aliens here and everything's nuts.
Or it's sort of the situation got so out of hand that they couldn't just paper it over.
No, so the whole so there's just like constant explosions in the city and everyone just kind of goes about their daily lives.
There's aliens everywhere.
Yeah.
There's other weird creatures everywhere.
Yeah, mushroom people who like
quad
wheel burgers. And a lot of this comes through in the original. So like I do think the original author has very good, just extreme character designs and.
I don't think anyone is going to argue that Naito does not do
worlds.
He's good at constructing worlds. He's also very good at coming up with characters.
Yes.
And visually too.
Yes. And he's also very American influenced because like Trigun is a Western. And in this case...
Well, and also too, let's face it, Trigun had its biggest success in the West. So much so that, remember, Badlands Rumble premiered at a con in, I think it may have been Soccer Con.
Yeah. Badlands Rumble, very good movie. But anyway, Blood Blockade, and this one's set in New York. So while Rie Matsumoto's visual style and style of directing really helped elevate the show at its best, which was when it was doing episodic stories, she also, and I think apparently worked together with Naito on this. So.
Oh, yes, and that's the thing. Yes. Arguably, Naito is not necessarily great at plotting.
Yes, so you combine Naito's... So they did an original story to kind of like connect this season together. And you combine Naito's not necessarily great plotting with Rie Matsumoto's style of dialogue, in which character talks to each other about anything and just talk in abstracts to create a just genuinely terrible story.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like, gee, I would like there to be more connective tissue from week to week, and then you were very sorry that you asked for that.
Yes, oh god, the last episode.
It also, it's not even just that, but there were some of the episodes introduce things that you're like, oh, maybe this is going to be a longer running plot, and then you never heard anything about it again, like the stuff with the vampires.
Yeah.
That just, one episode, never anything else about it, not in the slightest.
And the thing was, like, when it went episodic stories, like some of the best episodes, like all year, were in this. Like there was the one we talked about with the mushroom person. Don't forget where people forget about. That episode is fantastic. The one where there's this crazy lady who falls in love with an evil monster.
Okay, I have to admit, I didn't like that episode.
I thought that episode was great. She fell in love with an evil monster, but the evil monster was in an ugly body. So she then takes out his blood and sticks it inside an attractive guy, and they just kind of live together. And it's just this wild.
Yeah, there were some excellent episodic.
Yeah.
Episodes.
Yes.
But yeah. There was this whole story involving. Okay, so I will say this. So there's these twins in it, and one is a sickly girl, and the other is a boy who might be possessed.
Yeah.
And they're twins. And I will say this though, they were both voiced by Ria Kugimiya.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious listening to her argue with herself. Like,
I do remember this.
Performance of her career, because they're arguing with each other. It's fit. I love that part.
Yeah. Their
storyline is garbage, though.
Yes, unfortunately.
For the most part. Also, don't forget, they ended up delaying the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, and unfortunately...
they didn't come out until autumn.
And they were pretty awful.
And it's... Yeah.
So one thing so then the season 2 comes along, and season 2 isn't directed by Rie Matsumoto, so you get like, that the visual style and like manic directing of the show is like half the fun. But you're like, maybe maybe they won't have a terrible story this time. So what they do is they only focus on episodic style. But not only that, but then the director who comes
Shouldn't you be talking about this when the second season airs?
I guess so, but I'm just like, I'm on board now.
You know, thinking about it, I think Naito is, I think, if I recall correctly, I don't think he does more sentimental stuff especially well.
No.
I think he can sometimes be a bit mawkish.
Yeah.
Now, I'm saying this based on not a lot of material.
Yeah.
But
still, season 2 only did episodic stories. And so, like, while there's something a little lacking without the connective tissue between them all, the show as a whole is much better as a result. And the director basically completely continued the same visual style. Basically just completely copied Matsumoto, and it worked perfectly. I really preferred season 2. But one thing there is to say about this, though.
Okay.
Both seasons had fantastic endings.
Okay.
Do you remember the ending song?
Of course I do. No one would shut up about it for ages.
That's true.
But I think we need to move on to other shows that actually aired this season, not several seasons hence.
Fine.
But, I mentioned mawkishness. So let's discuss Plastic Memories, which a lot of people watched at this time, and a lot of people liked at the time. I don't think anybody likes it anymore, though, because I think people grew up and realized it was sentimental garbage.
I felt like, I still see people who actually, like, they don't necessarily speak like, this is one of my favourite anime, but they're like, I liked that for the most part, kind of thing.
I think its scores come down a significant amount.
Yeah, well, it's still around
Plastic Memories is a show in which there are robots, and this guy is going to work for this unit of the robot-making company that deals exclusively with when your robot has to be mothballed. Because for some reason, actually if you think about it, it's not that odd. The company designs the robots so that they stop working after 7 years.
Oh, just like Apple.
But it's a little more monstrous in that because people are buying these robots as, they're humans or they're pets or so there's a decent number of people who are like, oh, my kid died, so I bought this robot. And then guess what? They have to go through their kid dying again. So it's a bit more monstrous than what Apple does. But, the whole thing is designed to make people cry. And I remember watching the second episode and being like, this is very sad, but I was also really pissed off because it was so obvious what it was doing. It's a tearjerker. Yeah. And I really, it's so nakedly manipulative in its approach that it ticked me off.
It feels like it follows in the vein. It felt like it's the next strain of things like Anohana.
Well, yes. Yeah. I would call it sort of your bargain basement Anohana.
Yeah. A lot of people liked it, though.
Oh, yeah. People loved it. And so the lead, he started working in this robot department, and of course, some of the people he works with are robots, and there's one in particular who, she's designed to look like she's about 12. Of course, I fall in love with her, but she's near the end of her service career. Fuck that show. Anyway. It's so nakedly manipulative.
Anyway. Let's move on to something that I think you actually liked, which was Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches.
Liked is putting it, I think, a bit strongly. It's fine. It's a fairly faithful adaptation of a manga that I enjoyed up until it just turned into repetitive mush.
Yeah, it's one of those, I
liked the OP a bunch, because they took a very minimalistic approach with the OP. I think it's worth tracking down.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, shonen rom-coms, slightly trashy, but actually kind of works.
It's not really that trashy, though.
I guess a lot of them kiss each other as...
Oh, yeah, so one of them, she gets so it's about a high school, and there are 7 witches who have various powers, but it's things like the lead girl, she can swap bodies with someone if she kisses someone, and what starts the whole chain of events is that she and the lead guy fall down the stairs at the start of the story and accidentally kiss, and then he's like, what the hell is going on? Because I think that's a fairly normal reaction in that sort of circumstance, and it just goes from there. Yeah. So you have there's a bunch of kissing, and there is a moment I know where she swaps bodies with one of the guys, and she and the other girl, very frankly, she pulls back the pants to look down them, and one of the other girls is like, "Huh, wow, really?" And the guy who's now in the girl's body is like, "What the fuck?" So there is a bit of, like, teens doing stupid things because, well, of course, like, what are these? Whoa.
Yes.
It's fine. It's only a 13-episode adaptation of a manga that is, to the best of my knowledge, still running, though, so...
It's something I know I would have really liked as a teenager, because I used to watch a lot of these type of shows, and this definitely seems like a better one of these, like, shonen rom-coms, basically.
Like I said, the OP is good. I really dug the animation.
Yeah. And then we have a shoujo rom-com next.
Or a Monogatari.
Which is the one
My love story.
Which is about the 2-meter tall giant guy falling in love with his petite little girl. Well, little girl. Petite girl his own age.
Yes. Tiny fellow high school student.
Yes. And the thing that's notable... So this manga, like, I remember there being a bit of hype around this because it's done by Mad...
people loved this show, too.
The score has dropped a lot.
Has it?
Yes.
Well, at that time, people loved this show.
Yeah, it's by Madhouse, and it was an award-winning manga. And it's like, I think ultimately what kind of came out of it is, like, the show's perfectly fine, but once you get over the original gag of, "What's this giant guy falls in love with a smaller girl. Oh, isn't this wild?"
And that's also, too, because he's not your...
No.
He's huge, but he's also not conventionally attractive.
Not in the slightest, no. But he's also he's kind of lovable as well. He's dorky and he gets nervous and stuff.
Yes, but he also isn't your sort of prototypical shoujo love interest. Well, and also, too, because it's from his perspective instead of the girl's perspective.
Yes, because he's got an attractive guy friend as well. But yeah, I think the thing ultimately, and why I end up stopped watching it, is like, because suddenly, like, kind of like the veneer drops off, and it's like, this is just like every single other shoujo high school romance. On
the more treacly end of the spectrum.
End, yes.
Because I'll point out there's some racy shit in shoujo romance.
Yes, but it's one of them, and once you get over the kind of hilarity of the giant guy, small girl, it's just like every other one. But people really like that kind of stuff.
Also, not a lot of it gets adapted.
And this was a very well-made version of it.
Yep, that's another good point. A lot of it does not get a particularly primo adaptation.
Yeah, and this was one of the better ones that came out. I think a lot of people who made Chihaya Furu made this, I think, maybe.
I mean, visually they would seem to bear something in common.
Yeah. I think Chihaya Furu is better, but anyway.
Chihaya Furu is also adapted from a josei, not a shoujo.
Oh, for some reason I thought that was shoujo. Anyway.
We've had this conversation.
Okay.
It's a josei.
Other TV shows came out. This one that also came out with a certain level of hype was The Heroic Legend of Arslan, which was an original novel by the author of Legend Galactic Heroes. And this manga adaptation was done by the author of Full Metal Alchemist. What's her name?
I can't think of it.
Arakawa.
Under the Bridge.
Yes, dear.
Working on her manga.
Yes. So there was a lot of hype behind, like, that seems like a god combo. The story, it feels like set to be an epic, but one, I don't think Heroic Legend of Arslan Essay is the best story. I know there are people who actually really like this, but the story's not actually that amazing. But more strikingly was the adaptation was terrible.
CG horses.
Well, CG horse, but it was
Wasn't it sort of an odd studio that ended up being the one they gave the stick on this?
Leiden Films, who also did the really terrible giant cockroach anime.
Oh, I think, isn't it Leiden?
Terraformer, Leiden Films.
Yes.
Who are a terrible studio. Like, I'm just, let's not mince our words here.
Wait a minute. Didn't they do Once Upon a Time the breast-sucking anime? What's it called there?
No, that's... Oh, no, and I know who they are, but it's not them. They're like hoods.
Look, they cover similar territory sometimes.
No, because Leiden Films is given good stuff that then is crap.
Well, I'm sorry, just all the poop blends, okay?
Okay. Anyway, that's all. Like, it's fine. It's just a really poor adaptation of a story that really needs a really
sweeping epic
thing to really get across what it's trying to do, and this isn't it. So
maybe it would have been better as a movie.
But possibly, because there's an old OVA of ours now, which I know people quite liked back when it came out. But that's quite old. It's like early 90s type stuff.
Ancient history.
Oh. Anyway.
You were also born in the 90s, so are you ancient history?
I am now.
Wow. Dark.
You have been watching recently for some reason.
Oh, I was watching Punchline.
Yes.
Which is not as weird or as horny as it thinks it is.
No.
I don't even explain it. Punchline, I mean, there's the obvious way. So Punchline was made by MAPPA, by the way, and it concerns a young man who is, well, if he gets too horny, the world will explode. Mm-hmm. No, not explode, sorry, a meteor hits the world and destroys human life. Mm-hmm. But he also spends a significant portion of the show as a spirit because in a terrorist attack or a terrorist type event, he is accidentally whacked at, well, someone smushes him out of his body, basically his spirit, and possesses him. So then his body is walking around, it's not him, and a ghost cat shows up to be like, yo kid, this is how it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he spends half the show as a spirit. And he has been living in this boarding house where all the other tenants are girls, because of course. And
who all have very nice underwear.
Yeah, I'm never going to cease to be amused at how anime's really convinced that high school girls regularly wear extremely pricey and elaborate undergarments, which is just completely laughable. Yeah. And then it turns out that there's a larger plot that, like, oh, the world's going to end on December 31st. So then it's, okay, well, how do we avoid this? And yeah, I don't know. It's trying to do something. I don't know what to say about it.
I don't know what it's trying to do, really.
No, not really. I did watch the whole thing, and you're right. I don't really know what it was trying to do.
Probably worth mentioning that.
There's a lot less lovingly rendered underwear than they make it seem like there will be. And to be honest, I was rather aggrieved at that because I'll be quite honest. I mean, a cute bra is a cute bra, okay? I like to look at cute bras. There's nothing wrong with that. Panties I'm pretty indifferent about because, seriously. In fact, at one point, someone comments on the lead. I'm pretty sure this happened that, why are you getting so excited about panties? Seriously? But, cute bras are nice to look at, okay? And there just aren't that many. And there's really actually not that much of panties either.
Probably worth mentioning that this is a bunch of not X, because I think they went back, but a bunch of Trigger people worked on this.
Yes, and you can see it in the visuals for sure. Yeah. And I remember, I did look up, and it's the same character designer as a bunch of Trigger stuff. I just don't remember which.
I could definitely see it being Gurren Lagann.
Yeah, well, I don't remember. I'd have to look it up again. But yeah, it's a weird little thing that's there. I wouldn't say it's worth watching.
It was in Noitamina.
I'll point this out too, considering that the title is a pun, because it's Punchline, but it's Panchirain.
Oh.
Because Panchira, anyway.
Yeah.
So, especially considering that, it's like, shouldn't there have been more underpants? Whatever. And then there ends up being this, there's a magical girl running around, and there's a magical bear running around, and, someone's dead brother, and it's also, like I said, it's not as weird as it thinks it is, and it's not as horny as it thinks it is. So, I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was a total waste of time, but it was one of those things I walked away from going, okay, well, that was an anime, I guess.
Yeah. What else aired this season?
So there was Raycon, which was about a girl who can see spirits, and it's perfectly fine little slice of life comedy type thing with spirits. Oh god, there was a perverted cat in it though. He was horrible. God, I'd forgotten about him.
Anime's got anime.
There was Edotama, which was this CG thing that looked like it might be intriguing ahead of time with the trailer, but ended up being not good at all.
We still have to wait another 2 years before we get the good CG anime.
I don't think the issue is the CG. I think it was like a naked screaming lolly cat.
We had Denpa Kyoshi, which was, I'm only going to mention...
Absolute otaku teacher.
Which I'm only going to mention because it was about an anime blogger, and I was like, oh snap, it's an anime about me, and then it comes out and it's utter garbage, and I'm like, oh, never mind. It's like a bad version of GTO, and GTO, honestly, great teacher Onizuka, seriously, like, I feel like if that came out today, people would be like, what the fuck? I never liked GTO. I know maybe that's like my most controversial opinion I'm going to say this episode. GTO was never good, guys.
Someone should have called the cops on GTO. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
Then Edotama actually makes me think, though, of Show by Rock.
Oh, yes.
Which was a Sanrio property that was made to promote, I think it's a phone game.
Yeah.
And in it, there's this girl who... I forget how this ends up happening, to be honest. Oh, maybe she's using a phone game.
Yep. And
she ends up going to this sort of alternate world, but it's like a digitally constructed space, so it's not really an isekai. Or at least it's not an isekai. And she ends up joining a band, and she gets this guitar that is shaped like a heart, and she's a cat girl, and there's a sheep girl and a dog girl, and I forget what the final one is, and they're a band, and they're trying to compete, and yeah. A lot of people really liked this. It's very colorful.
I just remember the male idol group in this.
Yeah, they're like... What was their name? Their name's ridiculous.
Like Metal Destruction or something ridiculous.
Yeah, it's... And in fact, the male band in it, they do their... So Sanrio has their yearly character polls. I think they ranked above... like a significant number of the other Sanrio characters of greater vintage.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I don't remember their name.
One thing I do remember about those guys, though, was that there were 3 of them. One was like the main guy who was like hot-headed stupid. The second was a guy that basically had Chunibyo. The third guy was a guy called like Lion Man or something. But everyone was so impressed by him because he was an adult with a job who did his taxes. And they were like, oh my god, he's so mature and proper about everything, but he still wore the same ridiculous outfits.
Oh, and it turns out that the sheep girl's not a sheep girl, she's just an alien.
Oh, yes.
I watched a decent chunk of it, but it's the sort of thing I watch and it's like, oh, it's very colorful and it's kind of a little fun, but shit kind of wore out fast for me. But people who like this show tend to be big fans of this show.
And probably the final thing I'm going to mention this season is the very, very strange Ninja Slayer. Because we mentioned Trigger earlier.
Ninja Slayer from Animation.
Because I was just going back to this thing, just remembering what a weird creation this is. It was by a pair of Japanese people pretending to be Americans.
Yep.
Who had come to Japan.
But it was also, wasn't it? The Japanese people were pretending that they had translated something written by a pair of Americans who had come to Japan.
And were wanting to make something inspired by all the ninja stuff they'd seen.
Yes, and this was a book.
And the book is just the most nonsense, like, whoa, explosion, whoa. Like, it is the stupidest written book you will ever see in your life.
You say this as if you've read it.
I've seen people have posted, like, pages from it. And the anime successfully brings across that tone in that it is the most deliberately crappily anime. It's like, it feels a lot like Inferno Cop.
I mean, the visuals are very much Inferno Cop.
Yes. And there was the official subtitles to this, which they deliberately made to look like old Hong Kong subtitles. Which is to say, just complete nonsense. Run through Google Translate.
Yes. Well, Hong Kong pirated
stuff.
Yeah. It's such an artifact, is how I would put it.
It also has a weirdly brilliant soundtrack because it's boom boom satellites.
And every episode had a different ending.
Yes.
It's interesting rather than... I didn't finish watching it. It's something I've always meant to go back to because I like what it's doing in sort of the abstract.
Yes.
And I'm fascinated with just the whole way it happened and, the layers of, pretend going on.
Layers of meta going on.
I want to say there's a Twitter account involved at some point, too, that was supposedly the Americans who had written it. And I can't remember the names of the fake Americans, but I know one of them had...
an @ symbol in his name.
Yes, and I want to say the other one was like a Hispanic name. I could have sworn. It is something. It's an interesting concept.
I have no intent of ever watching it.
I think the novel has been translated into English.
Oh, gosh. So it was fake translated. Oh.
It was a fake... So it reminds me a little bit of, if you'll deal with me sidebarring a bit, there is this show called, what is it? Detective Comrade, which Amazon made. And it is presented as if, we found this, this was a little-known gem made in Romania back in communist times that was, this gem of the detective genre or the buddy cop genre. And, we decided that we really had to bring this to Western audiences because you should watch it. And it's actually something that was shot and made in 2017.
Yeah.
And it was shot in Romanian with Romanian actors and everything. And then they intentionally dubbed it badly into English.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
I am very glad Ninja Slay exists. I have no intent of ever watching it.
I might get back to it someday, but I say that my on hold list is 67 shows long, so I suppose that gives you an idea of how likely that is. There is one more thing we haven't mentioned.
I forgot to mention
There's one more thing you haven't mentioned, and I will not be stopped.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about this.
Love Live, the School Idol movie came out this season. It is way better than it had any right to be. As I've said before, I did not like the Love Live TV series, but the movie's actually pretty decent.
Did you see it in cinema?
No, how would I have?
Oh, I guess we were in Germany.
No, I watched it on the plane one time going from Germany to the US, and the man next to me, I think, was frankly horrified. Because it's there's so many colors happening, and I don't think he understood it all, and I think he was disturbed, and that was kind of funny. But it's a decent film. This was also a movie... It did get a release in the U.S., and some poor soul from the Arizona Republic, which is a newspaper in Arizona, was sent to watch it. And his review of it, people were like, oh, how dare he? But, I mean, he'd never seen any of it, and it's somewhat unfair him critiquing it like this is total nonsense when he hadn't seen any of it. But if you hadn't seen any of the TV series, I'm sure that it would be largely incomprehensible, especially so if you don't normally watch anime.
Yeah.
It's decent. It is way better than it had any right to be. I'm glad I watched it.
It was a bit of an event when it aired.
Oh, God, absolutely. This was... Because they showed it they had a limited release, and... I knew a couple of people who went, and they said it was pretty clear that it was this was a big event. And most of the people who went to see it were, teenage girls.
Yes.
And, early 20s women.
Yeah.
And those were the big hordes, which points to the fact, too, that Love Live in the West, I would argue, probably has a slightly larger female base than a male base.
Yeah.
Which is interesting, I suppose. But yes, I enjoyed it.
Not only were they events, then the crowds were super, maybe rowdy is the wrong word, but excited.
Into it.
Super excited, just
Also, this movie demonstrated that Honoka Kosaka is a new type.
Okay.
So, there's that.
And that was...
But that manages to wrap up this season, which, as we said, had a lot of stuff.
The spring 2015 season. That was a fun season. Very busy season.
It's funny because, as you said at the start, we actually didn't have a huge amount that we were like, yes, this stuff is great.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorites were Sound Euphonium and Triage X, which I think says a lot.
Yeah.
Or it says a lot about me, I suppose.
Yes, I think it says more about you. And we'll see you all next time.
Everlasting love.